guys, we're going to read a new book today called Champ. And before we get started, I want you to think about some activities that you're really good at. Can you think of activities that you're really good at? What are you really good at?
I'm good at soccer and cheerleading.
All right.
I'm good at dance.
Nice.
I'm really good at soccer.
Yeah. How about you, Ellen?
I'm good at lacrosse.
How about some things you're not as good at? Do you have any? What are you not as good at?
Softball.
Okay.
I'm not really good at soccer, but I'm still working on it.
Oh, I like how you said that. We're not good yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Anything you're not as good at?
Well, I'm not as good at softball yet, but I'm trying to get there.
Okay. How about you, Ellen?
I'm not really good at soccer.
Not good. So,
Basically.
what do you think? Do you think it's important to practice these activities? What happens when you practice and you put effort into the activities?
You get better.
You get better. What were you going to say? Do you want to add on to what they're saying?
You can get better at the thing, and then you could like it.
Yeah, you might end up enjoying it more because it's not as hard.
You can get better at it, and also if you try hard enough, you can get really, really good.
Good. Great. I want you to keep those ideas in mind as we read this book because you're going to see some characters in this book who go through exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so here's the book. If you want to take a second to preview it, look over the back and look over the front. And after you're done looking at the back, can you go to the table of contents? Okay, so jump to the table of contents now. This table of contents is really nice because the chapter titles match what happens in the chapter. So make sure when you read your chapters that you stop for just a second and really notice the name of the chapter because it'll help you get your mind ready to read and think about what's happening in that part of the book.
I think this book is going to be kind of sad because on the back it says, Champ is a former champion show dog, but when the accident that leaves him with Riley also leaves him with 3 legs.
I know. And that is important to notice because that's going to happen really early on in the text.
I look like this
In the picture, right?
Yeah, because they had to take off his paw.
His paw, yeah. All right, turn over to the first page, Batter's Error. This book starts out pretty typically. There's 2 friends, Riley and Kaylee. They're practicing playing baseball. Riley is going to be our main character, and he's the person who's telling the story. He is not very good at baseball, but Kaylee is, and she's trying to help him. Notice in the second paragraph that it says, I concentrated. Do you see how it says that? Mm-hmm. So this book is in first person, so every time that you see I, you'll know that that's Riley who's telling us the story. One thing that's tricky in this book is that there is a lot of figurative language. Take a look in that first paragraph. In the middle of it, it says, to do that, I had to get the hang of swinging a ball going the speed of light. Do you see what sentence I'm on? It's in the middle of the second paragraph. Yep. Yep, you got it. So there's lots and lots of phrases like this. Remember, we've talked about this before, so if you get confused at any of them, just go back and reread, slow down a little bit, and you'll be able to make sense of all of them. Go ahead and turn the page. So Kaylee and Riley are practicing playing their baseball game together, and Kaylee's helping Riley, cheering him on. It's going really normal, but then Kaylee pitches a super fast ball, and Riley ducks because he's afraid it's going to hit him, and this is where the story suddenly gets very dramatic. Turn the page. There's an SUV coming down the street, and the SUV thinks that Riley's going to run into the road to get the ball, so she slams on her brakes and ends up hitting a tree. Both of the kids are fine, and the driver is fine. It's a woman named Mrs. Lerner, but she says that there's something wrong with her dog, who is in the back seat. You can turn the page. Riley's dad and Mrs. Lerner drive the dog to the vet so they can save his life. And Riley feels like he disappointed his dad, and he thinks his dad is going to think that the accident is his fault. You can turn the page. Chapter 2 is called Curveball. And this is a tricky chapter because it goes back and forth from what's happening in the present tense to what's happening in Riley's mind. And he thinks about all this stuff in the past, and he thinks about all the different characters. So you really have to be alert when you're reading this chapter so you don't get confused. So this is the night of the accident, and in this chapter we learn about Riley's relationship with his parents. His dad puts a lot of pressure on him to be perfect, and Riley's mom tries to make him feel better, but he still can't sleep. He tries reading, he looks at a poster, you can turn the page. He works on a project where he has to build a suspension bridge, and he ends up working on this all night long. He's building this bridge with toothpicks. And then finally it's the morning, and Kaylee comes over and wants him to go play a baseball game with him. You can turn the page. And this is where it gets really tricky. The second paragraph is his thoughts about the past. And then the third, this whole thing is in the past. It's not happening right now. Okay, so when you read this part, it's like a flashback, and he's just thinking about his dad when his dad was younger. He's thinking about conversations he's had with his dad in the past. Turn the page. And it doesn't come back to the present tense until the second paragraph, where it says, I found my mitt buried in a tangle of socks. So he's having all these thoughts while he's looking for his mitt. He finally gets outside, and this is where you meet another character named Mr. Douglas. He's an old man who lives next door, and neither of the kids really like him. You can turn the page.
So they don't like him?
No, they don't like him.
Oh, okay.
They think he's weird because he's old.
Okay.
Mr. Douglas reveals something that's really important about the dog in the accident, though. Turn the page. Mr. Douglas throws Riley a curveball with the information he gives him, and it really is upsetting to him. So be on the lookout for the information that he gives. Okay? You guys can flip your books over for a second. So you guys already know that when you read fiction books, it's important to pay attention to the main characters, especially at the beginning of text. This is where we learn all about their character traits, and we get to know them like they're real people. But today I want to teach you that in more complex fiction books like the ones we're reading right now, you also have to pay attention to the secondary characters. The secondary characters have a huge impact on the main characters, and it's important to notice that impact. Let me show you what I mean. Remember when we read Because of Winn-Dixie? We knew that Opal was our main character, and there was secondary characters who had a huge effect on her. For example, Winn-Dixie helped her be brave enough to talk to her dad, helped her make all those new friends, right? Winn-Dixie came into her life and had a huge effect on her behavior. There was also the librarian. The librarian helped her see that sometimes people are mean because they're unhappy, and it really changed her perspective, right? So the librarian had an effect on her thoughts. When we are reading books, we have to notice the way that secondary characters affect our main characters, and you're going to practice that in this book today. Can you open to the next clean page in your writing about reading section? If you have a guided reading section already made, open up to that one. I'm going to actually ask you to start like right here, and I'll give you a tab later.
Okay.
Okay? Same with you.
Okay.
I'll give you a tab later. I want you to make a little 2-column chart, just like the one that I made. Make a line straight down the middle of your page.
Thanks. Thank you.
Probably from that way, straight down.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And then at the top of the first column, I want you to write secondary character.
Right.
See how I have it?
Right here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just right there. Write it on this side. And then in the other column, I want you to write effects. So we'll use this chart throughout this whole book to keep track of our thinking about the way that secondary characters affect Riley, the main character. Sound good? So today when you're reading, I want you to remember a couple of things. If the figurative language feels tricky, slow down, think about what's happening in the text, and help yourself make it make sense. Also, really be on the lookout for the secondary characters and the way that they affect Riley's emotions, behaviors, and thoughts. And if you notice something, write it down. Get it?
Got it. Good.
All right. Open up to the beginning and start reading to yourself, and I'll take a listen in on you. You want to leave your chart open in case you come to it.
Slice is helping us about like Winn-Dixie.
Oh, and Winn-Dixie was just an example.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? It was, since that's a book we all know together, that's a good question.
A baked Uncle bubblegum. She looked just like a picture for the major leagues. I concentrated on smacking
Can you
the ball.
read in a whisper?
I concentrated on smacking the ball to the kingdom come. Kingdom come. I was determined to not make a fool of myself when I went out to the Devonport Summer League to do that. I had to get the hang of swinging the ball going to speed of light. That was where Kaylee came in. Her aim would be like Billy the Kid jealous. She was better at pitching a ball than any other fifth grader in the Devonport, especially me. Besides that, she was my best friend.
Does that mean he's going to concentrate on smacking the ball to kingdom come?
Not really.
Can you look at all the other stuff that's happening in the paragraph and make a little guess about what it means if you smack the ball to kingdom come?
Like somewhere far?
And what made you think that?
Because like if in baseball usually there's like the part that's like the middle and there's the person that's sort of far. So it's like you sort of have to like hit it far.
You had to hit it far away. Good. So you used what you know about baseball to figure out what that figurative language means. That's a good strategy. Keep reading. Can you read it a little bit?
The kind where the earth smells wet but the sun feels warm. It felt good to be outside. The bat was heavy in my hands and pulled at my shoulders when I gave it a swing. Don't forget to lead with your hips, Kaylee said. Her cap was so low over her hair that I couldn't see where she had tried to cut it herself. I know, I told her. And hold the bat high over your shoulder, she added. I know, I said. This time, wait until the ball gets to you before swinging, she said. I know, I yelled. We had been practicing for nearly an hour, and this time I was sure I hit the ball over the rooftops. I hitched my shorts up, even with the belt on the first notch. My shorts were too big since the maple tree took up most of my backyard. We had to play baseball in the front yard. That's important to remember. It's not that we it's not that we wanted to play by the street. We were even careful so that the ball would go across the yards and not anywhere near the road. Of course, that all depended on me hitting it. Kaylee squinted, turning her gray eyes to slits. She eyed the air between my chest and knees, and then pitched the ball so hard it turned into a missile.
What does that mean? It turned into a missile.
No, it means like it went really super fast.
Good. And how could you tell that?
Because when I read this book, it was about the World War, and then it said missiles in there, and then when it said missiles go super fast.
Good. So you used what you know from real life. Good. Keep reading to yourself.
At the last minute, the SUV skidded to the left, turned a half circle, bumped over the curb, and careened off the road. The wind it created as it passed by felt cold against the sweat on my face. The silence after the SUV crashed into the tree was worse than any sound I've ever heard. It didn't last long. A high-pitched wail tore through the silence. I reached the SUV just as Dad and Mom ran out of the house and across the lawn. Dad gave me a quick look before pushing me aside to open the driver's door. "Are you okay?" Mom asked, coming up behind me. She turned me so I wouldn't see the car, but I pulled away from her grasp to watch Dad. Kaylee ran from her picture spot in the middle of my yard to stand by me. Mom reached over to give her shoulder a squeeze.
Keep reading to yourself. Oh, will you read to me?
Lily ran from her picture spot in the middle of my yard to stand by me. Mom reached over, give her shoulder a squeeze. Naturally, Mr. Douglas saw everything too. He dropped his hoe and hurried over his front lawn. My neighbor moved pretty fast for an old man. I was sure the next door neighbor made a habit out of spying on my family. Nobody ever did him, but he was always outside. He had been returning to police from cracks in the sidewalk that led to his front door. He's the only thing out there. I know he's the only one out there, so he can wisely swing the back through the air. A lady sat in the driver's seat. White fist clenched the steering wheel and clenching the steering wheel. It wasn't nothing later either. It was Mrs. Leonard. Everybody in Delaware knew Mrs. Leonard. Yeah, here. She lived at the base of the mountain that was named after her grandfather. So she was so rich she would diamonds to the grocery store.
Can you guys put your eyes up on me? You can flip your books over for a second. Owen, can you take a break for a second? Thank you. All right. So, did you guys notice any secondary characters who seem to be affecting Riley so far? What are you noticing?
Kaylee.
And what kind of effect does Kaylee have on it?
The effect is, well, their best friend. Her best friend was Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Another secondary character that I found.
So that's their relationship,
Yeah.
that they're best friends. Does she affect any of his emotions, behaviors, or thoughts so far that you've seen?
Well, thoughts, because he wants to be better at baseball with her.
Mm-hmm.
And behavior.
So that's kind of his behavior
Yeah.
thinking. Okay, so could we say by practicing with him?
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Olivia.
I was gonna say what Sophia was gonna say.
Why don't you say it your own way?
Kaylee, because Riley doesn't want to play baseball, but Kaylee's trying to make him get better at it.
Okay, she's motivating him a little bit, right? Go ahead.
I think also another person that has a big impact on him is the dog,
Okay.
because right now he's caring about the dog because the dog got really hurt.
So you're thinking he's affecting his feelings and emotions, maybe? So he's worrying him? Could we say that? Go ahead, Owen.
Kaylee, the fix is they try to get Riley better at baseball.
So she's really helping his behavior, right? All right, so listen, I'm sure you guys have lots of great ideas of these secondary characters and how they're affecting him. So in just a second, I'm gonna ask you to go. You guys can even stay together and just work in the center. You can add a little bit onto your chart, okay? Can you take a break from working right now, though? I wanted to share with you one thing that Jordan was doing before you go off and you work on your own. Can you guys flip to number 1, or page 1? You all right?
Not like the bug didn't that the blood was taken from his.
It gets That's the worst part of the book. It gets happier as the book goes on. Okay, so in the first sentence of the second paragraph, it said, I concentrated on smacking the ball to kingdom come. So Jordan and I were reading that together, and I was like, what do you think that means? And she was like, I don't know. But instead of just stopping right there and giving up, what she did was she reread it, and she thought to herself, what else is happening in this paragraph that could help me understand it? So she was thinking, well, it's all about wanting to be on the baseball team, and he has to work really hard, but I'm still not really sure what it means. But she still didn't give up. She then thought to herself, what do I know about baseball in real life? And she was like, well, I know that you want to hit the ball really hard. So it made her think, she put all that together, and it made her think that smacking the ball to kingdom come meant that you hit it really far. And then that made sense with what was happening in the book. And that's exactly what it means. So she found this confusing part, and instead of just being like, oh, well, I don't care that it's confusing, she tried a few strategies until she made it make sense. And I hope that all of you guys are doing that same thing every time that you read too. Okay? And I hope you're doing it even when I'm not sitting next to you. All right, so why don't you do you want to take this with you so you remember what we said, or you have it already?
We have it.
Okay, so why don't you guys take a minute, you can sit there and you can fill out your ideas in your chart so you don't lose them, and then tonight for homework I want you to read chapter 1 and chapter 2. Get it?
Got it.
Okay.